Okay, today your objective is the students will learn to find critical points of quadratic equations in order to graph quadratic equations. You want to focus on using your tool strategically, which means using your calculator. And the critical points that we are going to talk about today are whether it has a minimum or a maximum, the zeros, and the y-intercept. So all of our equations will be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And we have to figure out how to get the points in order we can graph the parabola or the equation on our calculator. So you've looked at two equations on your warm-up where one had a maximum and one had a minimum. So in order to get your maximum, you have to have an a value that's less than 0, so that negative a. And it's the highest point on your graph. So this would just be a little sketch of it. So the maximum would probably be right there at the tip of your graph. To do this on your calculator, once you've keyed in your equation, you hit the second calc maximum, you toggle left, enter, toggle right, enter, enter. And I will go through those steps with you. So again, you either have a maximum or a minimum. The minimum is when a is greater than 0, and it's the lowest point on the graph. You'll do this the same way, except you'll hit second calc minimum, you'll go to the left, and then you'll go to the right, and then you hit enter twice. Typically on most calculators you have to hit enter twice. So your minimum would be right around the bottom. I wanted to do it in red. The bottom. Okay? And then in this whole unit we're going to be practicing factoring, which is going to calculate our zeros for us. So the zeros are really when the graph crosses the x-axis, or when y equals 0. So if you have a little parabola here, there's your coordinate plane. If this is your parabola, typically you either have 2 zeros or 0 zeros. So those are your zeros, right where it hits the x-axis. So once you've keyed your equation in, you can hit the second calc 0, toggle left, toggle right. You will have to repeat this step for each 0. So if you have 2 zeros, you'll have to do this step twice. So I might maybe put a little star next to this one. And then your y-intercept is just where the graph crosses the y-axis. So when x equals 0, you can again use your calculator to do this, or you could just substitute 0 in for x. So you want to make sure you have the steps of how to do each one. Some people are much better with the calculator than others, so if somebody around you is super good, it might be nice to help out your neighbor or ask for help. So the y-intercept would be right around there where it's hitting the y-axis. All right, so now you're going to want to actually enter in your equation. So your equation is here. So what you can do is, on your y equals, you want to make sure it's cleared out. So y equals, there should be nothing in there. You also don't need your plot on. So if your plot is highlighted like mine is, just go up to it and hit enter. And then we want to be on the standard window. So if you could hit zoom, just kidding, if you could hit window, and it should look like this. If it doesn't, just hit zoom 6 to get to standard, and it will take you to that standard window. And then now you're going to key in your equation. So x squared minus 6x plus 8, and you hit graph. All of our graphs today will be able to see nicely on our window. So you can see the minimum is right there, some zeros, and the y-intercept. So you don't have both a min and a max. So we can see on our graph that we do not have a maximum. So you want to cross out maximum because that doesn't even apply to this problem. And then you're just going to follow the instructions for your minimum. So if you're looking at your graph, you can hit the second calc, go down to minimum, and here's where the toggling is. So you want this blinking light to be to the left of the minimum because it's asking for left bound. If it's already to the left, all you have to do is hit enter. If it's not, you just have to hit your arrow buttons to get to the left. Enter, and now you toggle over using those arrow buttons. You have to be to the definite right of the minimum or the maximum. I like to give myself plenty of room. And so you just, now it's asking for the right bound, so you hit enter, and then you have to hit enter again. Some calculators might say 2.99999, so you can round that to 3. Others might just flat out say it's 3. So your minimum is at 3, -1. So when I am checking these, I'll be checking to make sure that you got the correct minimum. I'm sorry, it's not -3, it's +3. I'll be checking to make sure you got the correct minimum and that you graphed that minimum correctly. So that would be to the right 3 and down 1. Okay? Now I'm looking at my zeros and I see that I have a 0 right about there and a 0 right about there. So remember, you're going to have to do this step twice. Okay? So second calc, 0. I typically start with the leftmost one, so I'm going to be trying to find that 0 right there. So I go to the left of that 0, enter, and then I go to the left of that 0. So you're working on 1 0 at a time. Okay? So now one of your zeros is 2 0. So you would plot 2 0. And now you have to go back and do those same steps again to get your other 0. So second calc 0. We're already to the left of it because we're trying to find that one right there. Enter. Toggle over to the right of it. Enter, enter. You have to hit enter twice, so it doesn't say guess anymore. So your other 0 was 4 0, and that would get plotted right there. Okay, and your y-intercept. So you could substitute 0 in for x, or you can just calculate it. So you could hit second calc value, x equals 0, enter. So 0, 8 is your y-intercept. And my graph is a little different than yours. But you can see that 0, 8 would be, this would be 6, 7, 8 would be right about here. So I would be checking all of those points. And then you also want to connect, just do your best job to connect and make it a parabola. So this is a parabola facing up. Okay, it's always nice to put your arrows on. Okay, so that was a good example. I'll also put an example. I'll do two, maybe I'll do number 2 as an example because that's a -x squared. So now you would have to go to your y equals, clear, and type in the new equation. -x squared plus 4x. Oops, not x. All right, graph. Okay, so you can see that this one faces downward, which is why we have that -x squared. So you won't have a minimum this time. So you can go ahead and cross minimum out because you don't have it. You also notice that we don't have a constant term either, so we'll see what happens with that. So maximum, second calc, maximum. We're already left to the left of it, so hit enter, scroll all the way over, and hit enter enter. Okay, so you're going to round that to 2, 4. If you ever have a question with your round, please let me know. So our maximum will be 2, 4. So you want to graph that appropriately. 2, 4. All right, now we're going to go do our zeros. You can see that there are 2 zeros. There's one right here, and there's one right there. So again, we have to do this step twice. So I always start with the leftmost. It's just a habit I have. So I'm going to be calculating this one right here. Okay, and I'm to the right of it, enter, enter. So that happened to be at 0, 0, which is the origin. Okay, and then I have to repeat that step because I have 2 zeros. Okay, 4, 0. All right, and then now your y-intercept, you do second, calc, value, you want x to be 0, and that happens to be at 0, 0 as well, which can happen. Okay, so you can just, you don't even have to plot another point. And now you can connect your points and make it a downward facing parabola. Okay? So your goal is to get all these points and get them graphed. I would really like you to get the points first, get them checked, and then graphed, especially if we end up not finishing the whole packet. It's more of a quality over quantity. So I might stop you guys if we don't finish in time so we have time for the next activity. The next thing we're going to do is you're going to turn this in for classwork points, and then I have a sort and graph activity for more classwork points, and then I have a closure. So hopefully we have time to get to everything.